You hear a lot of people out there say this line, AI isn't going to take your job. Someone who knows AI will. I don't happen to be a big believer in that particular statement.
If you're job searching right now, you're in the right place. Welcome to Land Your Next Job, the show that helps you move from ghosting and rejection to interviews and offers. I'm Erika Parker-Price, a certified career coach with a background in tech who has spent nearly a decade helping professionals land roles at companies like Microsoft, Google, and mission-driven organizations. Each week, I share what's actually working in today's job market, from LinkedIn and networking to how AI is reshaping hiring. You'll get clear strategies and inspiration so you can run this marathon without burnout or guesswork. Follow the show and let's land your next job together.
Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be talking about market forces. What are the things that are happening in the environment, in the jobs market, that are impacting your search? And unlike a previous episode I did on the trends that I'm seeing in the 2026 job market, these are things that you can't necessarily change. They are what they are. They will change over time, but they aren't necessarily in your control. So whereas in the trends, we were talking about things like LinkedIn and interviews and cover letters, those are all things that you can change the way that you're showing up for those activities. This is going to be something that's a little bit more in the category of you just need to know what's going on out there. Okay. And in the interest of sharing my most open, most honest view of what I'm seeing there in the job market, let's go ahead and jump in. Some of these may be new information for you, but a lot of them may be things that have you shaking your head and saying yes. The reason that we're here talking about them is because I think they impact you. The first one is in-person work. So it is 2026. We are more than 5 years removed from that time when everybody was sent home for remote work in the pandemic, and things have really changed. I live here in Seattle, home of Microsoft and Amazon, and both of those companies have seen massive shifts in what is required in terms of in-person work. Those companies, depending upon your specific department, etc., they may be requiring 3, 4, or in the case of Amazon, even 5 days in person. Of course, there are accommodations that are available for a variety of different reasons, but it's really a big shift, particularly for companies that had people that either moved away during the pandemic or they hired people remotely. And so that is a big change. The way that it's impacting the job search is what I really want to focus on. If you are looking specifically for a remote position, what I want you to think about is the competition that you're up against. So you are up against everybody else that is qualified in the whole country, if not beyond. Usually it's country-specific hiring, so we'll leave it there at the national level. But the major difference is just in the sheer numbers. If you are looking for a job in a specific city, you are automatically reducing the number of people that are going to be available. Now, I am not here to have an opinion on whether remote work is the way to go, whether it is more productive. There are all kinds of studies that have been done and will continue to be done on that. I don't have an opinion on it. I was a very early remote worker. I will tell you that I worked remotely 2 decades ago when I moved to Nebraska. That's a story for a different day, but I worked for Intel. I was the only employee in the state of Nebraska, and I had a pretty incredible manager who allowed me to do that. So I have definitely done it. I've done it both ways, but what I want to focus on is from the job side. If you are only looking for remote positions, I do think your search is going to be more challenging. This also holds true if you happen to live in a location that doesn't have a lot of companies, or specifically the types of companies and the types of work that you're looking for. So it's just something to know that whether you're open to working in person, hybrid, whatever it is that that particular company is looking for, if you're open to that, you may improve your chances in the job market and you may shorten the time that you're looking for a job. Now, there are definitely exceptions out there. I know companies like Atlassian, ServiceNow, companies like that are very much remote first and very open to hiring from anywhere. So if that is something that you have to have, then that's always a possibility to go looking for those types of companies. If you have a specific reason that you need to work remote, a medical exemption, for example, there are ways to get accommodations to that, but it doesn't necessarily make it easy when you're in the interview process. Okay, moving on to market force number 2. You hear a lot of people out there say this line. I don't think it's attributed to anyone in particular, but it goes something like this: AI isn't going to take your job. Someone who knows AI will. I don't happen to be a big believer in that particular statement. I think the reason that it's out there is a lot of people want to blame the shifts in the job market on AI. Is that true? To some extent it is, but what I am seeing is very limited cases where a particular job here in early 2026 has been taken over by AI. What is happening, however, is shifting budgets. And so that's my second market force. Money is being reallocated, particularly at the larger companies, towards building out these data centers. Phenomenal amounts of money, billions and billions of dollars is going towards that. And what that means is there's less money for headcount. And that is without a doubt leading to some of the layoffs and just the overall tightness in the market. So what I see out there is not that AI has taken these jobs, but there is definitely a shift in terms of market dynamics and in terms of where those budgets are being allocated. So if you look at, for example, the large data center that Meta is building out in Georgia, I believe it is, their anticipated employment for this space, which has the physical size of Central Park, it is a huge, massive space. It's only going to employ 500 people. Okay, so that's a lot of money that's being spent on a project that will not necessarily generate employment. And the reason that I put this here is I don't want us to be blaming things that aren't really happening out there in the market. So I wouldn't say that because of AI, all these jobs have been taken away. It's just not accurate. Is there a big shift on the horizon? Absolutely. We'll cover all of that in future episodes, but right now I want to focus on just the budget. And what that means for you as an individual is that it may be more targeted hiring, right? It's important to see who are the companies that still have money out there, who is hiring in your space, rather than assuming that it's going to be business as usual. Trend number 3 is around the risk level that I'm seeing. I see companies being very risk averse. And this shows up in hiring in so many different ways. It can show up when companies fail to open the job recs that they need. Maybe the people working internally know that they need more people here doing these jobs, but the company just isn't opening the headcount for it. I see it when companies are preferring internal mobility, people moving around within the company versus external hires. It's just this fear around making the wrong decision, making the wrong financial decision when it comes to making a hire. There have been times a few years ago when there wasn't really any risk associated with hiring, right? I mean, I worked at companies and they would go hire 2,000 new people for a particular position because it was just a time, budgets were not tight at all, and there just wasn't any risk level associated with it. What I'm seeing now is just a really different environment, and that definitely impacts what you're seeing from job openings. Okay, those last 2 market forces that I mentioned, both budgets and companies being risk averse, those are pretty heavy. So let's move to one that is maybe a little lighter, a little bit more on the positive side. And this is who has money out there, right? We talked about how big companies have these budgets that are being allocated towards data centers, but who does have money? And what I'm seeing is more activity in the startup space. This could be companies that are getting their funding from either private equity or venture capital. But that's where I'm seeing that there's companies that have a lot they need to do, right? They need engineers, they need go-to-market people, they need salespeople, they for sure need business development people. All of these needs exist in a startup space, and many of them have secured the funding to actually go and be able to hire people to do that. Now, working for a startup, it depends on what level, what funding level they're at, right? Are they in seed funding? Are they all the way to Series F funding? Where are they in that? That makes a big difference in terms of what type of company that you're looking for. But of course, one of the things that you need when you're looking for who is hiring is who has the money to be able to fill these positions. who actually is opening up headcount for it. And I think startups is a positive space to be looking at. They don't necessarily pay the same as a larger corporation. So even though they have money, they may not have the same salary and the same benefits that you've seen in other places. But one thing they may be more open to is remote work. So they tend not to have a lot of time to be making these decisions. And so sometimes they might be even more open to that remote possibility. Or maybe they are all remote themselves. So there's some interesting things to look at there. And we'll continue to talk about that and how you find those opportunities. Okay, my last market force that I want to talk about is the timing of the job search market. If somebody were to ask you how things move in the job search market, any of you who have been out there applying and interviewing will probably come to this conclusion on your own. But I want to normalize it for you. The market is moving very slowly. And I know this from my work with job seekers, with recruiters, with hiring managers. Absolutely every single part of the market is moving incredibly slowly. And what does that mean for you? That means that you could apply for a job that you are perfectly qualified for and hear nothing for months. It means that when you reach out to a connection and that connection says, yes, I went ahead and I sent your resume over to the hiring manager, I talked to the recruiter, and then you hear nothing, they hear nothing, right? All of that is happening. When you get scheduled for interviews, it can be weeks in between different steps of the interview process. And this carries out through literally the whole thing. Not at every company, but it is definitely more the rule than the exception. When you are negotiating the offer, when you are waiting to get a start date, all of those pieces are moving incredibly slowly. I tell you this for two reasons, but when this happens to you, I want you to be expecting that it's still going to be slow. Regardless of what part of the process you're in right now, there's nothing wrong if it's moving slow. It might be incredibly frustrating, but it is what it is right now. And so I want to let you know that from an expectation perspective. I tell you also from a planning perspective, when people come to me and they have just lost their job and they have unrealistic expectations of how long the job search is going to be, this is something that I talk about, how slowly the market is moving. So even if today you go out there and you find that perfect job, you get somebody to help you land the interview, you go through it, it is still a several week process. And so I want people just to be aware of how that's happening so that you can plan accordingly. Of course, we wish we could speed it up, right? All of these market forces, if I could wave my magic wand for you, I absolutely would. What I can do instead is just give you a sprinkling of the truth so that you know what to expect and you know how to plan. As I said at the beginning, the majority of these market forces are things for you to understand rather than to react to, rather than to change. This is something that we talk about every week in my Career Reset program. If you're ever interested in that program, go ahead and check out my website, erikaparkerprice.com. That's Erika with a K. And I'd love to have you be part of that community. Why do we talk about these things in that group? Because it is so impactful on your search. I know how challenging it is when you are doing everything right and there's something that's happening out there in the market that is actually having more impact on you, or at least it feels that way, than everything that you're doing, right? If you're finding yourself in a situation where you're getting far down the road in an interview process only to find out that that job rec has been closed or they have moved that job to a different location. We talk about it in my community because I don't ever want anybody to feel alone. That is why I do this podcast as well. I want to normalize what's happening out there in the market. I want you to understand that you are not alone, that some of the things that feel really different than any previous time you have been looking for a job, you are not wrong. It is a different market. The way that you need to show up for it is definitely different. I hope this information is helpful in terms of getting you to understand what is happening out there and feeling like you're not alone in this process. If you want somebody to talk to about it, feel free to come find me on LinkedIn. I'm Erika Parker Price on LinkedIn. My DMs are open. You are always welcome to send me a message, and I would be happy to chat with you. May all of this help you in terms of landing your next job. Now go have a great week.
That's a wrap for this week on Land Your Next Job. If this episode helped, please leave a quick review and subscribe wherever you listen. Share it with a friend in transition, and I'll see you next Monday. Let's land your next job together.